This is absolutely crazy. The story of Kent Hovind and how he was actually already supposed to have been released from prison. However, the government has decided to add more charges and to try to bring him in on more counts to try to keep him in prison basically for the rest of his life. Now, if you don't know who Kent Hovind is, he is the creator of CSE, Creation Science Evangelism. He has a website called drdino.com. I had met him, I think it was around 2001 or 2, and when he came to Fort Wayne, where I live. And I spoke with him personally, asked him a few questions. My friend who came with me, he bought his entire set of movies, and we went through the whole thing. Okay, and what was so different about Kent Hovind was he would let you copy his movies. He would let you sell them. You could buy them, copy them, and sell them if you wanted to. He just wanted to get the word out. It wasn't about money. He just wanted to get the word out. Okay, I knew the guy was serious. And he even let me copy part of his website and put it on my website. Okay, that's how cool of a guy he is. Yet, he's going to be in prison potentially for the rest of his life if the government gets their way and they're able to pin these charges to him for mail fraud. Now check this out here. You're going to see something that he wrote in his blog, and it's very disturbing. You're going to be shocked at the people who tried to put him in prison, the people who did put him in prison. You're going to be shocked to find out that part of these people actually, it's shocking, they're rapists. Okay, child pedophile rapists. Okay, the two assistant attorneys who prosecuted him, one of them was convicted for raping a 5-year-old. The other one had a husband has a husband who was on a list, a sort of a pedophile porn list. That was found on another judge's computer who killed himself. Okay? Just check this out. You're going to be shocked.
If you scroll down the list, there's been a lot of updates. I followed them all from the beginning. You'll see this one that's called Complaint Heldmeyer. Click on that one, and it's a little bit longer than usual. It's about 3 pages, but we're not going to read 3 pages of this. I'm just going to show you just one little bit. Scroll down to point number 3 here. This is what Kent Hovind wrote from his prison cell. He said, starting in about 2003, Pensacola-based Assistant U.S. Attorney Michelle Heldmeyer led a team of attorneys and IRS agents targeting this conservative ministry. In other words, the IRS were targeting his ministry. They finally got an indictment against both my wife and I on July the 11th, 2006, on 3 totally bogus charges, as explained below, by using lies, deceit, and withholding exculpatory evidence. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting, this last bit of the sentence. One of the American US attorneys on the team, J.D. Roy Atkinson, was arrested after my trial while going to Detroit to have sex with a 5-year-old. He hung himself in his jail cell on October the 5th, 2007. More about that below. So, the guy that convicted, the government lawyer that convicted Kent Hovind was a paedophile. So, to double check the information, we go over to there's a Wikipedia article here, but you can just very easily copy and paste the name of J.D. Roy Atkinson into a search engine, and then you'll find mainstream news articles. It's on the New York Times, posted an article, Fox News covered it, but it was covered in a sort of late night back end story fashion, and only once, and not many people are aware of it. But there's the guy. That's the lawyer who convicted Kent Hovind and he was a paedophile, and he was arrested and put in jail himself and found hanged in his cell. And this is the type of thing that we're dealing with. Obviously, Kent Hovind was put in jail because he's very, very good at telling the truth. He can provide, and often does, put complex information together in an easy to understand way, and because he was absolutely destroying the official narrative of evolution, and showing that creationism is true in a way that is completely undeniable, because he was so good at that, they put him in jail to shut him up. Thing is, he's due for release. Kent Hovind is due to be released in February 2015, but they're trying to put more charges on him now to keep him in jail. I mean, he's served nearly 10 years for a crime he hasn't committed, and they want to put him behind bars probably for the rest of his life, but it all depends on this December hearing. So over at WorldNet Daily, it seems to be the case that they're the only media outlet that have covered this story, and it needs to go viral. It needs to be everywhere. Everybody needs to know that if you're telling the truth, you're a target. If you're exceptionally good at telling the truth, then your fate is probably going to be like Kent Hovind's. You'll be arrested and put in prison for a crime that you haven't committed. They'll stitch you up on charges that you haven't done. And WorldNet Daily are now reporting that a federal court Monday in Pensacola, Florida, scheduled a trial to begin on December the 1st for Kent Hovind, founder of the Creation Science Evangelism and Dinosaur Adventureland. So they're trying to pile on more bogus charges after he spent 10 years in jail. They're trying to put more bogus charges on him. Number 20. In 2006, a government SWAT team raided Kent Hovind's Creation Science Ministry.
I believe Behemoth is the long-necked dinosaur. Now, there are 13 different long-necked dinosaurs, okay? There's the Brachiosaur, the Apatosaur, the Cetosaur. He's got the big seat, okay? There's the Blondosaur. You have to talk to her kind of slow, okay?
19. Kent and his wife, Jo, got arrested at gunpoint. Jo was dragged out of bed and not allowed to get dressed. This violent method of arresting a suspect is usually reserved for hardcore gang-related activity. It was disproportionate and a totally over-the-top display of force.
This one professor was getting very angry. I seem to do that to them. He said, "Mr. Hovind, do you realize there are nearly 400 varieties of dogs in the world today?" I said, "Sir, I have no idea how many, but 400 sounds good." He said, "Do you mean to tell me that you believe all those dogs came from 2 dogs on Noah's Ark? You want me to believe that?" I said, "Sir, would you look at what you're teaching your students? You're teaching your students that all those dogs came from a rock."
18. They were both thrown in prison. Jo got released from jail a few years ago, but as of February 2015, Kent maintains his innocence from behind bars. 17. The prosecution of Kent Hovind was led by Michelle M. Heldmeyer, US Attorney, and J.D. Roy Atchison, Assistant US Attorney. In 1993, Judge Richard Kreidler of Jacksonville committed suicide when he was caught and charged with the crime of purchasing illegal pornographic materials. The following year, in May 1994, Michelle Heldmeyer, now the US Attorney, made national news when it was found that her husband, Joseph Heldmeyer, was on the same pornographic mailing list as the judge. He was never prosecuted. The Sun Sentinel, in an article titled Attorney's Actions Warrant Probe from May 14, 1994, poses the question, why? Was it because he's the husband of an assistant US attorney, Michelle Heldmeyer? Presumably.
I said, ma'am, do you believe in evolution? She said, yes, I do. I'm a professor here at the university. I said, well, ma'am, would you please tell me then where we came from? She said, we came from a macromolecule. I said, and where did that come from? She said, from the oceans, from the prebiotic soup. I said, and where did that come from? She said, it rained on the rocks for millions of years. You could see it was slowly dawning on her. You know, I do believe I come from a rock. Yes, ma'am, you do.
16. Just a few days after Kent Hovind's trial, the Assistant US Attorney, J.D. Roy Atchison here, was caught, arrested and jailed for attempting to rape a 5-year-old. Number 15. At Kent's trial, Judge Margaret Casey Rogers, the presiding judge over the case, allegedly said, Kent Hovind's crime is worse than rape. Did the judge know the prosecutor was a rapist? Number 14. To appeal the case, Kent paid $6,000 for a full court transcript. A court transcript is an unedited copy of every word spoken in the courtroom. To be valid, the appeal had to be filed within 12 months. The documents were held back for 16 months, making sure Kent missed the deadline for appealing his own case. 13. 4 months after the deadline and too late to file an appeal, Kent finally received the transcript, and somebody had tampered with it, removing the judge's words, worse than rape. 12. 8 attendees of the court have signed an affidavit stating that they all heard Judge Margaret Casey Rogers declare Kent Hovind's crime to be worse than rape. Whoever tampered with the official court transcript is not known, but that fact alone, that it was tampered with, is enough to overturn the case. 11. And what hideous, monstrous crime deserves the title worse than rape? Structuring. Not murder, not genocide, no. Structuring. That's withdrawing any amount of your own money from your own bank account. I'm not making this up. If you withdraw money from your own bank more than twice in the last 10 years, then you're guilty of structuring. He served 8 years in prison for a nonsense made-up crime. 10. To recap, the assistant US attorney who prosecuted Kent was a rapist. The judge allegedly said Kent Hovind was worse than a rapist. The prosecutor was then found guilty of rape. Then the judge's statements about rape got removed from the court transcripts, and those transcripts were finally delivered to Kent 4 months past beyond the deadline for appeal. And that's only half of it. Do you still believe Kent Hovind was guilty? 9. 2 juries were dismissed until the guilty verdict was made. 8. Kent has been moved around from prison to prison 23 times in the last 8 years. Some say they're trying to get him killed, because the more you move a prisoner around, the more likely they are to share a cell with a violent inmate. 7. Allegedly, the IRS agent Scott Schneider seized over $42,000 from the Creation Ministry's safe, and then created a tax bill for the exact amount of money seized. 6. Judge Margaret Casey Rogers has a track record of handing out unjust and outrageous rulings against Bible believers. For example, she issued a contempt order against 2 school teachers for praying before they ate their food. The Washington Times reported, and the source is at the bottom of the screen there, that over 60 congressmen stepped in to show support for the teachers who were facing jail time, and that the judge was completely out of line, ruling against the First Amendment Constitution rights. She ought to have been dismissed as a judge at that point, but the case got settled out of court and the judge is still in office. This is outrageous. Number 5. The same judge, Margaret Casey Rogers, who allegedly misdirected the jury on the first trial and seems to have delayed the paperwork to stop the appeal, and may even have ordered the tampering with the court transcripts, has been selected to be the new judge in the upcoming trial. That is a massive conflict of interest. Number 4. A coordinated effort between the police force who authorised the SWAT team, the IRS agents who invented tax bills, the prosecutor who was a convicted felon, and the judge with a track record of issuing heavy-handed anti-Christian rulings can only require Congress to investigate, because unsound, unsafe, rough justice will continue to infect the system unless people are made aware.
All I've ever wanted to do is get the truth out, and I did not commit a crime to come to prison. I did not break any laws, and I will stand before God and say that, and He will agree, because He knows that as far as what the law says, I didn't do anything. There's a lot of irregularities in my case that I'm asking for Congress to do a full investigation from start to finish on this case. They need to say, look, what happened here? My case is a classic example of many things wrong with the justice system, with the court system, with the prison system. And all I want to do is like Gideon. All Gideon could do is shine the light and make a lot of noise. And God gave the victory. So I'm praying specifically that people like you will be able to help shine the light and let folks know what happened.
Absolutely, and we...
From the San Jose County Sheriff's Office. I can talk about the 3 specific charges if you'd like, but that's all explained on other programs. Basically, now they've put me back under in county jail, and they want to add another prison term. I should have gone home last February. Now they're adding another charge about filing a Liz pendants. Just a notice that the litigation is still pending. If you want to buy this property, you might want to be careful. And so they're calling it mail fraud, and it has a 20-year sentence for mail fraud.
Wow.
Which is and that's only one. There are 6 counts. So they could literally give me 100 years in prison for this upcoming charge, which is so bogus. What happened is I filed a complaint of misconduct against the judge and against the U.S. attorneys in my case. And I filed a Bivens lawsuit because they kept my legal box in South Carolina for 20 months after I moved. And I was busy fighting my case. You kept all my legal stuff. Okay, perfectly fine. The Bible says in 1 Timothy chapter 1 that the law is good if you use it lawfully. And I'm in favor of everybody obeying the law, including the judge and the jury and the U.S. attorneys and the Congress and the president. Everybody should obey the law. I'm trying. I've always tried to. I didn't break any laws. Anyway, so we'll see what happens. February 9th is the trial in Pensacola, Florida. I really ask folks to pray for that. If you can do anything, if you want to be one of the 300 like Gideon had to help shine the light and make noise, then go to any of those websites, 2peter3.com or freekent.com, and make it go viral. Because I have nothing to hide. I'll answer any questions people have. If there's people saying I broke some law, okay, tell them to set up an account. I'll call them and we'll discuss it. I'd like to know, what law did I break? Please show me how.
Absolutely.
The Bible is written.
And
about half the Bible is written from prison or captivity by innocent men.
And you've proven yourself too that there's actually no law in paying taxes in the first place. It's supposed to be voluntarily, but these criminals, they want to put you away because you bring light, you expose the truth, and they don't like people like us who blow the whistle on their corruption.
And this whole thing is it's always about money. One of the guys comes to our Bible study now is a millionaire from the D.C. area. He said he spent 96 months in prison, just got finished. Now he's back for another charge. and it was over this mail fraud, conspiracy to commit mail fraud. He said, which is one of my charges. He said, it is one of the dumbest laws ever passed. How on earth? They have to get inside your head. They have to know you were trying to think about mailing a letter which might defraud somebody out of something. Of course, nobody got defrauded out of anything. And that law needs to be rescinded. Tell Congress, look, guys, you are giving these different government agencies the clubs to beat us with. Take away their club. Rescind some of these stupid laws, okay? Get rid of this mail fraud law altogether. Just rescind it. Get rid of the IRS altogether. Just delete it, okay? There's all kinds of other people that fight that battle. Just when they've got time to spend all this money on me, a preacher, they have too much time on their hand and way too much money. Take away their money.
What if the United States government imprisoned you for loving God? Before this story unfolds, American Christians need to be warned. Either we fight for the truth, or lose our right to preach the good word.
Kids, you tell kids in school, hey, you shouldn't steal. Well, why not? Because God says you shouldn't steal. That's why not. But if there is no God, what are you going to tell them? Because it's not nice. Well, that won't cut it. We've lost a whole generation because of our philosophy we're giving them, folks.
And evolution is not a well-confirmed theory. You got to define what you're talking about here. Texas has laws requiring textbooks to be accurate. So does Florida. So does Wisconsin. So does Alabama. So does California. Textbooks shall be factually accurate. That's all I want, is accuracy in textbooks, okay? Minnesota says a teacher shall not deliberately suppress or distort subject matter. Evolution is a dying religion surviving only on tax dollars. It's dead, folks. It didn't happen. Now, the evolution theory is positively anti-science. There's not a shred of real evidence to support the theory other than oft-repeated lies.
If Americans just learned that the IRS was actually knowingly deceiving them, that would be enough for them to rise up and put a stop to it.
Hosea said, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. What do? There are perilous times coming to this country and to the world, real serious times. I think probably real soon.
For those that may not know, I'm Kent Hovind, and I speak mostly on creation, evolution, and dinosaurs, but the federal government put me in prison 99 months ago. On February 2nd will be the anniversary, 99 months. There are many, seriously, I guess illegal is the best word to use, things that are illegal, things that are wrong that the government did in my case in order to put me in prison.
The prosecutor that was literally prosecuting you in your original trial turned out to be just the worst kind of filthy pedophile.
After the trial, he flew to, he went and seized the church bank account, and then he flew to Detroit and got off the plane with a doll and a bottle of Vaseline and got arrested.
It's no longer just a political scandal. The IRS's alleged targeting of conservative groups is now the subject of a criminal investigation.
The FBI is coordinating with the Justice Department to see if any laws were broken in connection with those matters related to the IRS.
A just-released investigative report by the IRS's own watchdog says that more than half of the conservative groups targeted were asked for irrelevant and unnecessary information.
To the average American taxpayer, the question here is whether the Internal Revenue Service, which, as you say, is guilty of frightening incompetence.
The White House insists it had no idea any of this was going on.
Can you say categorically that nobody at the White House and nobody on the president's political team had any knowledge or was involved in any way in the targeting of Tea Party groups by the IRS?
Yes. You emailed your subordinates about initiating a, parentheses, C4 project and wrote, we need to be cautious so that it isn't a per se political project. Why were you worried about this being perceived as a political project?
On the advice of my counsel, I respectfully exercise my Fifth Amendment right and decline to answer that question.
Evolution is the foundation philosophy for humanism. The idea that man is God of the universe. The humanist philosophy is talked about in Romans chapter 1. It says, they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, so God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. How do we determine right from wrong? I've asked people all over the place, how do you tell right from wrong if evolution is true? There simply is no possible way to tell right from wrong. It's a real simple question, but they have no answer. You can't tell right from wrong if evolution is true. If man is God, and this is what evolution means, then man makes the rules and the strongest survive. Might makes right. There's no way to tell right from wrong.
What is the meaning of life? Why does the universe exist? Why does life exist? That's what drew me to science.
Peter Meta would say that the question, why are we here, can't be answered by science. And I don't understand how we can say with such confidence that it can.
Well, what I would say about the question why is, why do you think you have any right to ask it? It's not a meaningful question. It's a silly question. Doesn't deserve an answer. The mere fact that you can ask a question, the mere fact that you can frame a question in the English language, doesn't mean that it's entitled to an answer. But it's not a question that deserves an answer. The correct answer is, don't ask such a silly question.
Is it not part of the human condition to ask these questions?
It may well be part of the human condition to ask silly questions, yes.
It's crazy. It is just beyond crazy what they've done. They're claiming this $400,000, which was withdrawn, lawful money withdrawn to spend on legitimate bills, all church ministry bills. They're claiming that was structured, which it wasn't. And they're claiming it should be forfeited to the government, which it should not. And they're claiming the church property should be substituted to pay for that, which it should not. The final charge, count 58, was threatening an IRS agent. I prayed for the guy on the radio after they raided the ministry. I said, Lord, I'm your child. I want you to handle this. These people came after us. What they did was illegal. I want you to fix it, Lord. You did it in the Bible. I want you to do it for me. I turn them over to you. He thought I was threatening him by praying for him on the radio. They gave me 3 years in prison. I welcome a full investigation by Congress. There will be a full investigation before God one of these days.
Amen, amen.
I'm standing there looking at this lie proven wrong 50 years ago while hundreds of kids come through in school groups. The kids are never told, well, this has been proven wrong, boys and girls. They asked the folks at the Tulsa Zoo before they took the display down, they said, why don't you take this display down? The zoo director said, we don't have the funding to remove it.
Well, then who did create the heavens and the earth?
Why do you use the word who? You see, you immediately beg the question by using the word who.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
And what was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right, and how did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
According to the Big Bang Theory, it all started with a little tiny dot and exploded and spread out over all the universe much faster than the speed of light. Well, the Big Bang Theory, as we'll see in a minute, is stupid.
Something can come from nothing. You can dispute exactly what's meant by nothing, but whatever it is, it's very, very simple. And why is that funny?
Well, I think it's a bit funny to be trying to define nothing.
Evolution is the foundation for communism. Communism is a theory that believes that God does not exist or is not necessary, that man is responsible, ties hand in hand with humanism. Roger Baldwin, the founder of the ACLU, the American Communist Lawyers Union, said communism is the goal. The purpose of the ACLU was to advance communism. That's why they were founded. Now, Moses Mordecai Marx Levy, alias Karl Marx, the founder of communism, had written a paper when he was 17 years old telling how much he loved the Lord. Then he went off to college, studied philosophy, turned his back on God, and developed his theories of communism, which go hand in glove with evolution. Did you know 75% of kids that go from Christian homes to public schools are going to lose their faith after 1 year of college? You parents better think long and hard before you send all your kids off to school.
Christians are under attack in America and throughout the world.
Brutally beat the faithful and drag them away.
In China, it was once easy to know what to believe in, the Communist Party.
If you think it is ridiculous to say Christians are under attack in America, you are mistaken and will be proven wrong. Tribulation is right around the corner, unless we Christians decide to fight back with the sword of truth, the Word of God. Christians must fight back to reclaim America, and our first fight is to